Good evening, friends out in the ethers. This is Joe Guinness, and welcome to the June 2025 episode of the Music Nerds free-flowing music discussion group. It's not joining me tonight, gathering with me tonight is Gus Creeder, who's back from a long trip abroad. Gus is in Cookeville, Tennessee, but he's been in Dublin, not Dublin, Ohio, but Dublin, Ireland. We have Rick Quinn also in Nashville, and every month I look forward to seeing his background of records, lovingly selected. It's true. What's it going to be? It makes me wish for the walls. I got to get rid of all those pictures of my dad and kids is what I have to do. Amy Rock is in Nashville as well. Amy had some adventures at Bonnaroo, which was really sad. I can't fathom that. Like the preparation one puts into that to have the plug pulled. Greenberg, my old buddy from Southfield, Michigan, now in Charlotte, North Carolina, joins us. He hosts an amazing podcast called Debts No Honest Man Can Pay, which will just introduce you to or refamiliarize you with, or just play music that you like. He's good, and he's got good bits in there as well between the songs. Last but not least is Andrew W. Spiss, professor from Cookeville, Tennessee, aka Teacher on the Radio. That's our group. I'm Joe Guinness from the lowest point in the Hudson Valley without being in New Jersey. And we're going to talk about covers tonight. And the reason we're going to talk about covers is I had a really traumatic day at work, working with a guy. I'm in a union shop. If you're in a union shop, you got to have a rat. And I was working with the rat. I just have a personal dislike for that guy, but you got to work together. But the worst thing about this was that he was playing music, and it seemed to be like song after song after song of really slow, emotionally charged covers of famous songs. I don't know what it would have been like, but it was like one slow version of Hallelujah after another, but they were different songs, and a lot of them were fast songs that were slowed down, and I can't even remember any of them now. But at one point I just said to myself, what the fuck is this? A radio station that just plays mediocre covers, and why am I stuck lit? Like, who would do this to another person or a song? But going through this project, I realized that I have very strong opinions about everything music wise, and a lot of my jam is not other people's jam, and that's the overstatement of the year. But it got me thinking about covers and what I love. And when it came time to choose a topic for the episode I'm leaving, I really wanted to be super self-indulgent and talk about one of my musical heroes, Scott Miller, who led the bands Game Theory and Loud Family. But I got him in here, but I really ended up wanting to talk about covers, and that's what we're going to do. And I had, I sent out a list of, ideas, cover, like, what would you call it? Just what covers. I have a long list of covers of, like, good covers of mess songs, bad covers of good songs, ironic covers as homage or cultural appropriation. I sent these out to you as just sort of thought starters. Brad Meldau and Radiohead, Anybody and Tom Waits. The cover is a self-inflicted wound. I read that again today. I don't know what it means. Maybe somebody came up with something. It was just me being too clever. But I wanted to start off tonight talking one that really hit home is bands who cover songs that sort of introduce you to a whole new world, or just recontextualize something you thought you knew. Or just hold your hand into an area. And I thought of several bands that I grew up listening to that turned me on to great music, and some are going to be really obvious. So I'm going to start off with a super obvious one, and that's Talking Heads singing "Take Me to the River." Who knew the staple singers, and a lot of I think a lot of people, like, there were people, or let's just speak for myself, is that there was some frisson about hearing white people do black music, and all of a sudden I'm feeling this cool entree into that world. And I sort of think that's maybe a universal thing for white people, especially white Jews who tend to, gravitate in a proportionally high number among Jews to soul music and stuff. Jay Giles, for example, Peter Wolf, just people who master that form. But Peter Guralnick, there's a great critic. So that's one. I also thought about REM, who covered so many bands that I wouldn't have known about or knew barely about. They covered the Velvet Underground. They covered Pylon. They covered Wire. Wire was a band I hadn't heard, but I'd heard of. But between them covering Strange and Salem 66 covering Fragile, and there's so many Wire covers, but there's just a few examples. The big one really for me is Game Theory, Scott Miller's band. He covered on their first full-length record, You Can't Have Me, which was off Big Star's third, and I hadn't heard of them until that point, and then I started hearing about them. Come to discover later that when Scott Miller hadn't really grown up or really knew about Alex Chilton and Big Star at all, but Steve Wynn turned him on to him. He said, "You sound like this guy," and he said, "I never heard of him," which is crazy. But he needed another band to turn him on to one of his great music loves, which is cool. So who wants to contribute their thoughts on that topic?
I do, because you just triggered something with your story about Big Star. I had a similar conversation with our mutual friend, the late Josh Sparbeck, when I was playing music, and he said, "Have you listened to Big Star?" I'm like, "Well, I bought Big Star's third on a cassette, but I didn't quite connect with it, and I was kind of bummed out because I heard all these great things about him." And he's like, "Your songs remind me of Big Star's." I'm like, "Really?" And then he said, "You really need to reconnect with Big Star." And he loaned me number one record and the second record, and
Radio City.
And then it made sense. I fell in love with those two records, and then I went to third. And I recommend nobody should start their Big Star journey with third. It will only leave you scratching your head. But if you start with the first two records, you will fall in love with them.
Yeah, and it's such a sea change musically that it'll blow you away even more after hearing the other one. It sort of it doesn't exist in its own world, really.
The first time I heard the Ballad of El Goodo, I was like, "Where have you been all my life?"
It's good stuff. Who else? Any hands to raise? Were you done, Scott? I'm sorry.
No, I'm sure I'm going to chime in way too much, but I had to share that because Big Star.
That's good. Yeah. We came to them from we're coolest people, the people who are cooler than we think we are. Amy, did you raise?
Yeah. I'll jump off a thing you mentioned that I discovered while I was going through what my favorite covers was a lot of that. I found 5 songs on my list that are white people covering songs that were originally popularized by Black artists, and some that I grew up just thinking were by these white artists. And as I'm discovering more into Black music history, just really appreciating more these original artists. I grew up listening to James Taylor's version of How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You. That's a Marvin Gaye song. And it's great. What else? Feeling Good, popularized by Nina Simone. Michael Bublé had his version we liked for a while. But Muse is one of my favorite covers of that. Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come. Ben Sollee, who does the cello, does a very beautiful and uplifting version of that. So that was one of my kind of insights while I was digging through my list.
Very cool.
You mentioned Pearl Jam and their covers. Now, didn't Eddie Vedder, or does he still come out and play a song solo before the opening act to get people in their seats? Just throws. I'd heard he did that.
He definitely does random covers. I think the last show both Andrew and I were at, he did kind of a solo acoustic song kind of in the middle of the set. That was a cover. I don't remember what song that was. Do you remember, Andrew? cover Eddie did?
It was at the beginning of the encore. It was not at the beginning of the show. The beginning of the show, they came out with a dark stage, and he does do a lot of acoustic covers, and this is killing me. What I do remember is that regularly in their set is Rockin' in the Free World, Baba O'Reilly, and we got both of those, but also All Along the Watchtower, and I think we got all of those at the end of night one.
So, did he do Save It for Later?
No, that's a great song, but no, we didn't get it Nashville.
He did a version of that for season 3 of The Bear, and he did a nice job of that.
The importance of Pearl Jam to doing covers brings up something for me really important to this topic. Is it seemed to me it used to be almost obligatory, I think, that in live shows that a band would pick out the cover, and everybody would want to know what cover are they going to do tonight. When Jason Isbell did his Tom Petty, he did a Ryman run where he was doing different Tom Petty covers every night right after Tom Petty's passing. Well, after seeing Isbell with the Baseball Project in Florida, and I traveled all the way to Florida for that double billing because I assumed they would do all the one of the REM covers and bring out Peter Buck and Mike Mills from the Baseball Project. Did not happen. But last fall at the Ryman Run, he did a different REM cover every single night. It was an REM festival.
Right.
And I remember, speaking of REM, when we used to go see REM, they always did covers. Last night I saw Flory at the Grey Eagle in Asheville, and they did Seeds and Stems Blues by Commander Cody as a cover song. So I feel like, I don't feel like it's as expected anymore that bands do covers, but I think for a while it was just sort of like, if you're a touring live band, you had to pull that cover, and even keeping people guessing what the cover would be is part of the fun.
And having been in a band, it's a blast to play covers. It's totally awesome to play actually a great written song rather than one you put together.
So I wanted to jump in because Andy reminded me when you were talking about REM, one of the coolest covers that REM ever did is like a serious guilty pleasure of mine. And I know people say, oh, your guilty pleasure shouldn't be guilty, but I love this song. But they covered Lou Gramm's Midnight Blue, which is it's underrated, and I love it.
You're Frozen.
Before I forget, when Amy was talking about white people doing songs originally done by black people, one of my favorite covers was a song I didn't realize was a cover, and it's Walking in the Rain by Grace Jones. I thought it was her song. It's just this really cool cinematic vibe, Sly and Robbie, and it turns out it was a cover by this new wave band from Australia called Flash in the Pan. And it's Harry Vanda and George Young. George Young is the older brother of Malcolm and Angus Young. And George Young and Harry Vanda were also in the Easy Beats way back in the 60s. But they had a small hit like in 1979 called Hey St. Peter. But they also did this song Walking in the Rain. And the original version just does not hold a candle to Grace Jones's version. So there's that. And we were talking earlier about songs that led you down a road that changed your musical life. And for me...
Am I frozen? No, I'm frozen.
But Jason and the Scorchers were my gateway drug. Them and Lone Justice, they were my gateway drug to cowpunk, roots rock, country music, all the American roots music. And for me, Ground Zero was Jason's cover of Dylan's Absolutely Sweet Marie.
Yeah. We haven't heard from Gus or Amy. Were you raising your hand? Okay, Gus or Rick, we haven't heard from y'all yet, or either of you.
Yeah, well, first off, it's so good to be back. This is so fun. I've missed everybody here. So I'm not super knowledgeable in the world of covers. I realized in some of my research that it really is just not in much so my era. Current day, so much of popular music and music that I hear about is from individual artists and not bands. And I think that with that change, it's brought out a sort of individuality that hasn't necessarily translated to covers staying super popular, like modern day. But there are a number of covers out there that I really love, and just as many covers that are some of the worst things I've ever heard. And it was really fun kind of putting it all together and getting a comprehensive little list. Like I know the first cover that really like blew my mind. It's a pretty recent one. It was from 2019 or 2019 or 2020. From the artist Leanne LaHavas. She's an incredible neo soul and R&B singer, and it was from her self-titled album. It was a single for the album, and it was a cover of Radiohead's Weird Fishes. And in a time where I'm not having the easiest time getting myself to listen to Radiohead, having this version of Weird Fishes, it is this slower, textured, stunning cover. It's so nice to have. And I remember when I first listened to it, I wasn't even necessarily super familiar with the original Weird Fishes. The Radiohead I'd heard was a lot of the early stuff. It was your OK Computers, Benz, things like that. So it really got me to dive in more to this era of Radiohead. And now, I mean, In Rainbows is like one of my favorite rock albums of the 2000s. It's unbelievable. But like that cover really like opened up a bit of a world for me. And we can get more into this discussion later, but I had one of the questions that you had sent, Joe, was, or I guess questions, was about artists that do not lend themselves to covering. Yeah. And finding one in particular wasn't super easy for me, but it had me thinking about how little covers apply in the genre of hip hop. And so much of it, and that's really, you know, my main genre of listening. When I first started listening to music myself, the storytelling and again individuality always really stood out to me. And I was a drummer too, so much of the rhythm of the production as well as the performance really like had my attention all the time. And it had me thinking about if there are any really notable rap covers. And the only one that I could really land on is an amazing song. It's Snoop Dogg's La Di Da Di from his debut Doggy Style, which is really him doing the La Di Da Di from Dougie Fresh, which is also a Slick Rick thing, this whole thing. But it's so fun. And but it had me thinking too of like, what rappers do I listen to that have done covers? And I landed on Denzel Curry, I believe in 2019, did I don't know, some of my biggest exposure to covers are live covers from Triple J's Like a Version. It's a online series that Triple J does. It's so fun. They bring in artists from all around the world to do covers of anything. And one of the most popular ones is from the Florida rapper Denzel Curry, who did a cover of Rage Against the Machine's Bulls on Parade, which is like one of the most raucous, exciting iterations of that song I've ever heard. And but it's so funny, like that's Denzel doing a rage song, or one of my favorite rappers, JPEG Mafia's cover of that he does live at every concert. So I've heard it live 3 times now, of Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe. Like the artists getting so outside of their traditional framework and picking from a genre that's not necessarily what they are known for whatsoever, and using the cover as a way to experiment there, I think is a really, you know, cool use of it. There are some other very cool ones and fun ones, like Fuji's, of course, Killing Me Softly with his song from Lori Lieberman, but it's really the most defining version of it is that Fuji's Lauryn Hill with Wyclef going One Time. It's just, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
I threw in the Gourds Gin and Juice.
Oh my gosh, I actually listened to that today. My boss at work, I was talking to him about all of the research and everything I'd done getting ready for this, and he had brought it up to me, and I listened to it today, and it's very fun.
Yeah,
it's a good time. But yeah, I mean, that was one of my favorite findings from it, and like kind of rabbit holes to go down. is wondering, like trying to figure out why modern day covers aren't nearly as popular as they were. Like the only big charting cover that I can think of over the last couple of years is I think incredibly tasteful, despite it being a big fat white redhead doing a Tracy Chapman song, but Fast Car from Luke Combs. It's a great version. I was driving listening to the radio the other day and it came on and I didn't change the station because I feel like I love the original so much, and we discussed that album and it holds a special place in my heart. And it feels like a very, very respectful, but that cover was absolutely massive. But it is so, they feel so few and far between now in like the in music discussion. But yeah, it was really fun kind of going back in time a little bit and digging into it. But yeah, there's my big spiel.
Awesome.
So I want to jump in quickly because Gus is reminding me. Cover that has the highest degree of difficulty, very few have tried, but none have absolutely nailed it, is Television's Marquee Moon. Cover song that should not work, but I love unironically, is the Oak Ridge Boys cover of Seven Nation Army.
Okay.
And,
sounds intriguing.
Yeah. So I'm gonna shut up for now and let somebody else talk.
Gus prompted me, and I'm going to try to be quick too, because I think Rick needs to get in here a little bit. The thing about that playlist, which we will share with our friends, and by the way, our Facebook Live is not working, so when the show is done, please send the link to your friends so they can watch it. But I was at the beginning of the broadcast, I was clicking where I usually click to make sure it's public. On my page, it's not public. It's only streaming to myself, and I couldn't fix it, and I was starting to get into the settings, and then I wasn't listening to all the cool things Joe was saying. So, but really importantly is the massive playlist that we've made, which we can share with anyone who asks for it. And it's growing because we made it a collaborative playlist among the entire nerd core here. And I was listening to it on shuffle today, driving back from North Carolina. I don't know a lot of the songs that are being covered, right? So like the context is like destroyed for me. I'm like, wait, I don't even know what this song is. Who are you and why are you singing this song? I don't necessarily know the artist even. Sometimes I knew the artist, but I had no idea what I was listening to. It was flummoxed, mind-boggling to me how little I know. And this is my number one hobby. I listen to music all day, every day when I can. When I'm hanging out with people, maybe I don't. But like I know so little. I'm in kindergarten, and
it's great, isn't it?
Scott's over here dropping a lot of expertise on us, but outside of Scott Greenberg, I think the rest of us are in kindergarten on this topic.
It's lonely in the upper grades.
I have loved thinking about this topic, and it reminded me that a lot of my early listening as a kid, a preteen, had to do with covers. Not all of them great. We listened to a lot of Elvis Presley in our household, and there were a lot of songs that I thought for years were Elvis songs that were covers of other artists. In fact, he probably did that more than anybody from a number of artists, except for Dolly Parton, who had the state of mind to say no to Colonel Parker wanting half of her writer's royalties, and then let Whitney Houston make her richer than God when she covered "I Will Always Love You." But I listened to a lot of bubblegum pop, which was in the 70s, was doing covers of bubblegum pop from the 50s, which was very interesting. And one of the things, I'll just throw out a confession and let it go at that. One of my awkward confessions is that my introduction to Abbey Road was really through the ill thought out Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees movie and soundtrack, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. That was my first introduction to the majority of Abbey Road, and so it took me a while to kind of right that ship. But some interesting covers for sure, including Steve Martin's Maxwell's Silver Hammer.
The Beatles would have said you were right to listen to Elvis, though. they would have approved of your depth of Elvisness.
Good.
That reminds me. Okay, artist who made mostly covers at the height of her powers, but just totally owned everything she did. Linda Ronstadt. She introduced me to Buddy Holly.
I think Nina Simone is one that was really a big cover song person, and I would trade a Nina version, and we're talking Dylan and the Beatles here, but I would trade a Nina version for I'll take Nina's Here Comes the Sun, for example.
Oh yeah. Oh, Betty LaVette's another one. Although not enough people know who Betty is, and she's fucking awesome.
I had a thought and now it's gone. That's not unusual.
Speaking of good covers of It's Not Unusual.
I think we wanted to talk about single artist tribute albums or various artist tributes. I have a single artist tribute artist. I'm still in my Metallica phase, so I want to tell you guys about Apocalyptica. They're a cello group. They do like orchestral covers of mostly Metallica songs, and they're like beautiful lullabies, and it makes me happy. And I think that's one of the coolest things about covers is transforming genre, taking a song that's good as a song, but then giving it a new home in a different genre.
Yeah,
that's what I like.
As an interpreter, John Hammond Jr., for example, recorded 2 albums of Tom Waits songs, one after the next. You know, Dylan. What did Dylan do? 3 albums of Sinatra, right? Or a 3-record set. I haven't listened to any of it. I
thought he only did one of Sinatra.
Maybe it had 60 songs. I don't know.
Yeah,
for a while.
Springsteen's Pete Seeger record is it was better than I ever could have expected. I still love that record.
It's phenomenal, Scott Greenberg, but also Pete Seeger was somebody who was a folk singer in the sense that folk music was the music of the folk and nobody owned it. And I think coming back to like Carl Sandburg and Alan Lomax and Harry Smith, you had this idea of the American Songbook, and there was just this one big songbook that we all got to sing out of. I was cleaning out some stuff, and I found a book from the 90s called Hootenanny, and it was a songbook of radical folk songs that was made to like pass around at campfires for people to so they could learn the chords, you know, and you could have a really good jam session. Somebody didn't know the lyrics, you didn't know the chord, you would pass around the community songbook. And I think a lot of Pete Seeger, I would think it was true with Nina Simone. I think it was true with some of the artists, like, I don't know, it was the Fifth Dimension, maybe one that would be like this, where like, I think in the 60s, there was this idea that we were like, perfect example. I didn't know that Phil Oakes wrote Draft Dodger Rag. I thought Pete Seeger wrote Draft Dodger Rag because that was the record we had. And I grew up on listening to Draft Dodger Rag. And if you've never listened to Draft Dodger Rag, it's one of the best anti-war songs of all time. Very pertinent today, by the way. But it's a Phil Oakes song. You know, I had to retrace. And when I do the mixtape, Gus, at TAC in class, students don't know who wrote what. I mean, they just assume a song belongs to the person that they was familiarized them with it. Ondara, if you guys know the artist Ondara, who's an African man who moved to Minneapolis because he loved Bob Dylan, he only found out about Bob Dylan when he had a high school fight with his buddy because he insisted that Guns N' Roses wrote "Knocking on Heaven's Door," and he lost a bet.
Ooh, man.
He lost a bet on "Knocking on Heaven's Door" and then became a Dylanologist. Know, after that.
Well, you bring up a good point. I mean, like, case in point, Twist and Shout. Everybody thinks Beatles. No, Isley Brothers. And I will fight you about the Isley Brothers. They were national treasures.
Money by Barrett Strong. They started off as a cover band, and so did the Stones.
Oh, love the Flying Lizards cover of Money, which was the first version I ever heard.
not familiar with that.
What?
I know. I'm going to have to look it up.
Can we get back? Amy brought up a really good topic. Does anybody else have any? I do have a couple of examples on the Amy top of full artist tribute albums or full tribute albums that are completely in a different genre. Examples. I'll go really quickly before I forget. There's a very obscure album called the Boys of County Nashville. I think what it is, but it's Irish Celtic bluegrass covers of U2 songs, and I think they're instrumentals. I think they're all instrumentals as well.
That's wild.
Los Lobos did an album a couple of years ago that was like all like bands from Los Angeles. That's the only one that's popping to mind.
I'm thinking one of the things I was thinking is like tributes that had mixed artists, different artists. Like one that I recalled was the Laura Nyro tribute called "Time and Love." I think there's a song from there on the playlist if you can find it. "Eli's Coming" by Lisa Germano. That was always one of my favorites. And as far as tributes go, one I had a song in the playlist from Kemper Van Beethoven. They recorded a complete cover of the Fleetwood Mac album Tusk, which I intentionally never listened to, but I finally listened to their version of Walk a Thin Line, which I adore, the Fleetwood Mac version of, self-pitying tone and all, and it's fucking awful. Not intentional, but yeah, I don't know. It's not a great album to begin with. It's got some amazing songs, Fleetwood Mac's Tusk, but they did it all, and they it is what it is, I guess. That's one of the things I'm thinking.
I will always love the title track of Tusk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so weird, and I love it.
Yeah, so I didn't necessarily love this tribute album, but it came out mid last year. It was the Everyone's Getting Involved tribute to Talking Heads, Stop Making Sense. Now, It's a mess. It's kind of ridiculous. The cool thing about it is just how like eclectic the lineup is of artists. Like you have Miley Cyrus and The National, and then like Paramore, who's Burning Down the House is actually very good. It's probably the best cover on there. Gene Dawson, who I love, has an okay version of Swamp. One of my favorite artists, Tizo Touchdown, does a really not excellent Making Flippy Floppy. And then maybe my least favorite, Kevin Abstract's performance on Once in a Lifetime of Brockhampton fame. But it's cool. I love that it exists. It's so cool.
Lord's version of "Take Me to the River" is pretty dope.
It's pretty good. Yeah, that's up. It's up there. And I don't hate Toro y Moi's Genius of Love. It's cool, but it's like the whole thing. Like it's a mess, but it's one where I'm glad that it exists because it's very interesting to see this lineup of very talented musicians of different eras, but all working right now, come together for one sole purpose. I love stuff like that.
You remind me, it came out, I think 2001, a tribute to Springsteen's Nebraska. Again, we're bringing up Nebraska. We should ding a bell every time we bring it up. But that's probably one of my favorite concentrated, let's go ahead and focus on this one specific album. That's really good. And to keep it authentic, all the artists record their tracks on 4-track.
Beautiful.
That's cool. Hey, Nebraska Bell. I went to a show with my dad last year. That was F.A. O'Donovan performing Nebraska, and it was one of the coolest shows I'd been to in quite a while.
Nice.
That album's awesome, of course, but that was probably, I hadn't thought of it until you said that, but probably my personal favorite experience with covers was that show at Basement East in Nashville. That's
very cool. I have her recording of that, and it's very cool.
Oh, she's amazing.
Yeah,
she's so cool.
I have one more concentrated cover album. I discovered it while I was working at WTTU. Is just on the stacks there, and it looked interesting. Pulled it down. It was called Late Great Daniel Johnston, and it was a bunch of current artists like Sparkle Horse and TV on the Radio doing Daniel Johnston songs, and that's what introduced me to him. So that was pretty cool.
I found him through covers as well.
While we're talking, I thought of 2 albums full of covers by artists that became classics in that artist's body of work. Ray Charles, Modern Sounds of Country and Western Music, and Willie Nelson's Stardust.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
That's a fabulous record.
So Rick knows the Long Players. They're a band out of Nashville, and they pick different albums to do, and they'll just pick an album. I saw them do Revolver. I saw them do Joshua Tree. I wish I'd seen them do more, but that's an amazing idea. Every year there's a Last Waltz tribute in Nashville. Joe and I got to go this year.
That was great.
They had the same thing in Charlotte, too.
I think we might organize one in Cookeville. The success of our Bob Dylan show in Cookeville is still, speaking of a covers show, I'm still reeling from that. I've got a couple on this category. The Music Is You, which is a John Denver tribute album, which I absolutely adore. It starts off with My Morning Jacket doing Leaving on a Jet Plane. And this one is, I think, got some clunkers, but I even like them as clunkers. The Day of the Dead came out in 2016, and it's a 50-some song Grateful Dead album. And there's one more. Oh, this one is one that's been in my life a long time, and I almost forgot to mention it, but I'm so glad Scott Greenberg brought up the Seeger Sessions. In early 90s, Folkways did a Woody Guthrie and Leadbelly tribute album called A Vision Shared. Sylvie by Sweet Honey in the Rock, Ain't Got No Home by Bruce Springsteen, Eats Texas Red by
Lanty Man.
Pretty Boy Floyd by Bob Dylan, the U2 version of Jesus Christ, Philadelphia Lawyer by Willie Nelson, Do Re Mi by John Mellencamp, Rock Island Line by Little Richard featuring Fishbone.
Yeah.
Emmylou Harris doing Hobo's Lullaby. That might be, and I actually, in all my research this weekend, I hadn't even thought of this one.
That's a great record.
My favorite records of all time, not just a covers album. I love it so much.
Vigilante Man is just so that you could use that as a substitute for coffee.
We're pretty far along in the episode. We got about 23, 4 or 5 minutes left.
Although we could probably go on for 23 or 24 hours with this topic.
Right. Well, I keep adding songs and thinking of things. Anybody's going to hear every one of them enough to register, but
I was adding like right up until like 5 minutes beforehand.
I can't wait to listen to this.
I am going to do a source. Like I'm going to do another long list to the best of my ability of source material.
I was bummed out that stuff that I have in my library that I love, covers, that were not available on the streaming services, I couldn't put on the list. So I shook my tiny fist at that.
The Pixies version of Leonard Cohen's I Can't Forget.
Or their cover of Neil Young's Winterlong.
Yeah.
But for me, the one I really wanted to include was X's cover of Shoot Out the Lights, which is just so incendiary. It's like one of those songs that you need to play loud. It's like, you remember the old Maxell guy? That's what I imagine playing in that picture.
Yeah. Mould's version of Shoot Out the Lights was equally explosive.
As Los Lobos has a pretty decent version of it too.
Yeah. Joe, you mentioned Leonard Cohen, and I've got to throw in a public service announcement to all non-denominational evangelical churches. I'm sure tons of them are watching right now, but please stop.
All of them.
Yes, please stop messing with Hallelujah. Just don't. I know you think it's cool and you're going to make it a Jesus. Please stop.
It's been
do
done.
something else.
Yep. Ruin another song.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you.
Stop ruining songs.
Yeah. Well, that's been covered in a million times, and 999,997 are maybe shitty. There's John Cale's.
Yep.
To me, and Jeff Buckley's.
And,
and
Rufus Wainwright.
Cale was the one who started it. You know,
Yeah.
the story. It's like a really obscure song that he suffered.
But I know what Joe's talking about. There's a podcast episode about it. It's fascinating. And Jeff Buckley's version almost didn't happen. Joe?
You know the story?
Yes. I love that story.
It's great. Do you all know the story? He's house sitting and he's going through someone's collection and he sees a John Cale record called Fragments from a Rainy Season, which is live solo. Brilliant record. And he never heard it, and he learned it and he loved it, and he found out it was Leonard Cohen, and you know, it's just started this whole thing. Like his was the version, I think, and then what's his name, Rufus Wainwright.
Oh, that was the whole Shrek thing, because so they couldn't get the rights to Jeff Buckley. And in the movie, I think it was Rufus Wainwright, but in the soundtrack, on the soundtrack it was Rufus, but in the movie it was John Cale. They actually did a documentary about Hallelujah as well, which I highly recommend.
There's a single book on it as well. It's fascinating stuff.
Oh yeah,
Leonard. But yeah, they should. My synagogue's choir, the vocal group, does that, and it's like, no, you're kids. You shouldn't even think about that shit until you're 30 or 40. You know, it's like a PhD in emotional disaster.
You
You know,
that takes me back to when I was a little kid, and I would wake up to, I forget, I think it was like one of the AM pop stations, and just songs that they played early in the morning. I was like, I shouldn't be hearing this. These are like depressing, very emotionally just complicated songs for adults. And I'm like, why am I hearing this? And I think it fucked me up for good.
in a good way.
Maybe.
My elementary school music teacher told me to listen to Brick House. I mean, told me to listen to it when I was like 8.
Well, you wanted to be a mason or
That's awesome.
No, I knew exactly what it was about. I got to be the person that at 8 years old had that sexual awakening because of that song.
Oh wow!
I got to be that person. Yeah. So there's a couple things that are adjacent to this that I think are really important. One is songs that name check other songs.
Oh yeah.
Or songs that name check other artists. And I tried to make a playlist about this 2 years ago, and I'm sure I only scratched the surface. And then also adjacent to this is songs about the problem of cover songs. So I've got 2 songs that I want to recommend that are on the topic of songs about the problem of cover songs. One is called "Play Something We Know," and it's basically about a low-level working stiff musician who wants to debut some original material, and everybody is like complaining, play something we know. You know, when you're making $100, you know, to play a set at the pizzeria, and you want to test out your original material, and they're like, play something we know. So that's a beautiful song. And then my friend that I introduced you guys to, Average Joey, has a song called Karaoke King, and it's the same thing. And in Karaoke King, it's a mashup of a bunch of different covers, but it's also about the problem of being basically a low-paid working ass musician who has to play cover songs in certain contexts because that's what people want to hear. So those two, Adam Hood's Play Something We Know and Karaoke King by Average Joey. And if with your permission, Joe, can I drop them in the playlist even though they're
absolutely
not covered?
So Andy reminded me one of my favorite songs about another band, Robbie Fulk's Fountains of Wayne Hotline, which is fucking brilliant because the premise is songwriters who are stuck writing songs would call into the Fountains of Wayne hotline, and there'd be like these little interstitial bits of the guy at the hotline giving them advice, and then interspersed with that there would be like these song segments, and Robbie and his band just nailed the whole Fountains of Wayne aesthetic. And the late Adam Schlesinger, I'm sure, still it makes him smile. I can't recommend it highly enough.
Sorry about that.
Oh, good. I want to mention not my most favorite cover, but my most cover. One of my best friends made a playlist that's just John Denver's Country Roads covers. And it runs the full gamut of like really beautiful, earnest covers, like the one by Waxahachie, to very silly ones, like there's an Oktoberfest Europop one. And then there's some that are downright awful. There's one artist called Mr. Wobbles, and I think there's like a rap break. It's so bad.
Oof.
But we listened to this like on a road trip, and we all went insane, and it was quite an adventure. My favorite John Denver's Country Roads version is the ska version, like by Me First and the Gimme Gimmes.
You know, Jason and the Scorchers also covered that. They can cover anything.
They're a great band.
Yeah.
That one, I taped it. It was probably the last song I taped off the radio. I had a cassette tape, and I taped it off of Lightning 100, Rick, when I first moved to Nashville in 1995. I taped Jason and the Scorchers cover of Take Me Home Country Roads off of Lightning 100 onto a cassette from the radio. That's the thing you used to do. You know, you remember making a cassette at the ready. You had a cassette at the ready in the stereo deck, and when a song came on that you liked, you recorded it.
Those were my first mixtapes, and they were awful because you would always get a clip of like maybe the little bit of the next song or the DJ. You had to be really good, and at the end I got really good with just. But yeah, wow, that takes me back.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a whole other mixtapes. That's a whole other topic.
Should we do a speed round of current listens, Joe? What do you think?
Yeah, no, we should. We should.
Can I very quickly?
Yes.
I kind of want to share just for the fun of the game. I have adored all of this positivity. Can I ruin it real quick? Sweet. So I just want to give some of my favorites that may or may not be streaming that I love for all the wrong reasons.
Okay.
First off, I want to start with the legendary "Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds" by the one and only William Shatner. If anyone listening doesn't know about William Shatner's incredible covers or just music career in general, please give yourself the opportunity to dive right in. I believe it released in 1968, the year after the song came out, which is incredible that he landed on it so fast. His incredible spoken word rendition. There's one that I have to hear at work all the time that I did truly in my heart believe was from Disturbed, but it's actually from Bad Wolves, which is Zombie by Cranberries, which after spending 4 months in Ireland only has become more grating to me. I hear it every single day on the light rock station at work, and it's truly appalling. This one is really fun. So this one also isn't streaming, but beloved grunge band Puddle of Mud has a version of Nirvana's About a Girl from their Bleach album. It's on YouTube. You can find it. I for just a good time showed it to my dad the other day because we were discussing this whole experience, and it's really one of the worst things ever put to record. And not record, I guess it's just recorded, but it's a live cover, and it's truly horrific, but I think you guys would have a lot of fun with it. And then the last one that I want to shout out today, which is a tribute to one of my absolute favorite musicians who recently passed away, Sly Stone. This was for a commercial in, I believe, 2017 from Cher alongside Atlanta rapper Future of Everyday People. And again, it's another one. You can find it on YouTube. It is just a joy to know of its existence and to have experienced it myself.
Right.
These are all truly incredible in the heart that went into them, and the quality that landed is just it's another, again, to put a positive spin. I'm so genuinely happy to know that all of these exist.
This made me think of gay covers of straight songs that have been made gay. And I'm sure there's a humongous number of these, but the only one that comes to mind is Pansy Division, the first homocore band, and their version of "Smells Like Teen Spirit" by Nirvana, called "Smells Like Queer Spirit," came out in the '94. Absolute banger. And that is something, I'm really, my friend Adeem has had a really hard time on the road. They are getting, they got stiffed at one club. They're losing money. Their car broke down. There's just a lot of struggles out there in the indie scene. And I know it's not just them. I know a lot of artists who are like not quite at a certain level really struggle just to exist. But heckling, so I went to see Green Day at the Cobo Arena, and this is, when Dookie came out. And so they went from being a club band, like an underground, like Gilman Street. They played the punk club 404 Willis that we ran on in the Cass Corridor, to playing arenas. And Pansy Division opened up that whole tour, and the crowds had been rude to Pansy Division at all the shows. But at Cobo, they threw bottles. They really were really horrible. And then I found out later they got, I think, a couple $100 each night for that, and they had to come up with their own expenses. So they of course, Pansy Division stayed over at the Punk House where I lived at the time. That's where they slept. They slept on the couch at the Punk House. So anyway, sorry. It's Pride Month. Hey, look, it's June. Tell my Pansy Division story.
Pansy Division also does a great version of "Cowboys Are Frequently Secretly Fond of Each Other." I first heard that song through them, and I'm proud to say that I learned about it because my old band, Jennifer Patience, was on a compilation with them that was put out by the great Wally Pleasant.
All right.
New listening speed round. Current listening. It's not new listening. It's current listening speed round.
I can go first. All right. So James McMurtry has a new record called "The Black Dog and the Wandering Boy." I don't know if you know this, but he drops Isbell's name on a song. You might have brought it up to me. I don't know. But he says opening for Isbell in a cavernous room. It's a great record. His records can all sound alike because it's a three-piece band. He writes a certain way, but this it's like sharp writing or sharper writing, and this is really good stuff. Cold War Kids just dropped a new single. There's a band I got totally turned off by. They after their second record, they said our next record's coming out and it's going to be totally different, and fuck you if you don't like it. That was their basic thing. And I'm like, okay. But it's good. It's good. I've been spending a lot of time with Wussy, who apparently I was a fan of Chuck Cleaver's first band, the Ass Ponies, a Cincinnati band adjacent to the Afghan Whigs, but he let that ended after 3 or 4 records, and he formed Wussy, who I've ignored or been ignorant of for 20 some years, but it's great stuff. Kathleen Edwards has a new record coming out that's sort of a return to form, called Billionaire. The new single's out now. She also did a bunch of covers. She covered a U2 song, among others. And then this is the thing that for me, I'll show Salem 66's Salt. This might be their first, no, it's not their first vinyl, but it's a 10-song compilation chosen by the 2 primary songwriters. They said it was hard to pick one. We picked our favorite, but all their stuff appeared after years of nothing for streaming. I totally forgot about my favorite record, Natural Disasters and National Disasters, Natural Treasures. They're a great band. Boston, 4-piece, 3 women, 2 main writers. This is the collection, but it's all out there for streaming. It's got a cover illustrated by the great Tony Millionaire. Y'all familiar with him? Oh, everybody froze. Damn it.
Oh, Joe looks frozen. Can we put Joe in the defrost?
It's funny how
No, he's back.
whenever only the people who are hosting have internet issues.
I know. Sorry, I passed the
I've
bad
never
luck on
had
to
them
you.
before like this, but they keep
No.
and y'all freeze first, and then I'm the one who's freezing. That's what happens. Anyway, those are my picks. Who's next?
So I only have 2. I Quit, the new Haim record. I've spun it a couple times. I'm not sure where I've landed on it. But it's hard when the previous album, Women in Music 3, I just loved so unequivocally. And there's moments I love, but I've only given it 2 spins, so the jury's still out on that. But I love them, and I have Joe to thank for hipping me to this. One of my all-time favorite records, and a record I associate with the season of spring. Rain Parade's Crashing Dream. They were part of the Paisley Underground, and Joe just kind of nonchalantly was like, hey, they just dropped a deluxe edition. And I was like, zoinks! So I went ahead and ordered it off of Amazon. There's 2 discs. It's the full album and a bunch of bonus tracks and live tracks, and it's just chef's kiss. Other than that, just the more I listen to the new Tune Yards record, the more I love it. I'm also getting to the point where I think I've got like 5 serious contenders for the year-end top 10, but we still have a half year left, and I am patiently waiting until Friday for tracks 2, the Lost Albums. So if you're trying to get a hold of me on Friday and I'm not answering my calls, I'll be like taking a nosedive into the new Springsteen box set.
Awesome. Who wants to go? Who's next?
Guess I'll go real quick. As has been mentioned, I spent weekend before this last one trying to be at Bonnaroo. We got sent home on Friday after having only seen 1 day's worth of official shows at the festival. Fortunately, Wednesday night in group camp, folks that are part of my camping group put on a festival within a festival with a bunch of really cool artists. Fantastic stuff. It was headlined by Daft Punk, and that was a really fun set.
Wait, but you please elaborate on that.
It was the real Daft Punk, I think. It was a super fun set. It was a bunch of like Daft Punk mashups. They looked like Daft Punk. Right. Some of the people I were with were already having a good time, and I think I convinced them it was really Daft Punk. It was a good time. But one of the other artists I want to tell you about is called Future Joy, and it's a duo. The guy has a saxophone. It's a good time. So Future Joy, got to see them on the farm before having to head home. Once I made it home, I lucked into getting tickets to see Justice, which was the artist I wanted to see. And it was actually way cooler because they played at the Pinnacle, our new venue here in Nashville, and that place rocks. And I especially love them because they put on that show with 24 hours notice. And I got to be in the balcony seeing that amazing light show from above, and it couldn't have been better. So great. Love Justice, and that show ruled. Their light show blew my mind.
And then didn't you get to see that Remy Wolf Super Jam thing?
I did also get to see the Remy Wolf Super Jam 70s pool party. It was all 70s songs covers. Grace Bauer came out and riffed on Bowie's Fame, which was my favorite song. They closed out with September. Hayley Williams was there. A couple other great artists. It was just a fun time.
Nice.
So I feel very, very, very lucky how my Bonnaroo weekend turned out.
That's great.
Yeah.
Rick, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of things real quick. I enjoyed the Pulp album more that came out recently. I think I mentioned in the group the recent Camp album. I thought was really good as well. I'm looking forward to. I think in mid-July, Wet Leg is dropping their sophomore album, and I like what I've heard so far. So those are just some things I'm looking forward to.
Who's next?
Well, I'll go next. So I will admittedly say I've been kind of tapped out on new music. I've been, adjusting to the whole being back in the U.S. thing, and news has taken up more of my brain than art. It's been a bummer. But to cope with all that sadness, I've been listening to lead singer of Geese, Cameron Winter's debut album from last December, Heavy Metal. Now, fun for me because my roommate back in Dublin knows him. So that's just kind of fun. And he didn't believe me when I was like, oh yeah, I'm a fan. He's awesome. That album is like one of the best written albums I've heard in a long time. It's so beautiful. I recently went with my dad to the Black Star Symphony in Nashville. Got to hear Black Star from the Nashville Symphony Orchestra, as well as a collection of musicians who played on David Bowie's Black Star.
Oh,
So
nice.
that album, as well as, weirdly enough, one that Dad had played for me, Earthlings, have been in rotation. Both awesome. Black Star is truly one of my favorite Bowie albums, and Earthlings like one of the most interesting things I've ever heard from him. Also, as a little tie back to my other home of most of this year, I've been listening to a lot of Kneecap, the Belfast rap group who have made massive headlines this year for various different reasons, but they are so interesting and exciting. They had a film, a kind of mockumentary type that came out last year that I loved. Actually watched it on the plane on my way over. And their album from last year, Fine Art, is a real standout to me. I've also been listening to the single Guilty Conscious a lot because it's just so hard. And then I got really into Franz Ferdinand's self-titled record the past couple months for some reason. I don't know why, but it is so fun. It's some of my favorite. Yeah, it's also 04, so that's me, represent. Love that album. And then a couple of singles that I've really been into that are leading into an album I'm looking forward to is from underground UK rap and R&B artist Jim Legacy with an X. I'll let you decide where it goes. His song Father is awesome. It's like 2 minutes long. It hits. It's a great little melodic cut with a really addictive beat. And then that was the first single for the record. And then the second single for the album is called Stick. It's a lot more melodic and R&B driven, but just as entrancing and just fun. It's very fun music, and I'm super excited for his album. Who knows if it's good? Maybe you'll hear about it in December. But yeah, that's really what my rotation has been like the last month or so.
I'm going to lay a whole bunch of them really fast, but I'm really just grateful to be back on the Nerds. And if you guys can all stay on the call after we turn off the red button so we can plan July. And Gus, I think it is your turn. So just to host, so let us know what you want to do in July and looking at your calendars, keep your calendars out.
I'll be thinking about it.
Hotline TNT dropped Strawberry Moon on Friday. That's excellent. SG Goodman dropped Planning by the Signs on Friday. Is excellent. I almost was ready to give away my tickets to Jason Isbell and the Band of Horses show in Birmingham on Saturday to go to the SG Goodman record release party. That's how much I love the SG Goodman album. But the SG Goodman record release party is very much sold out in Lexington at the Burl. So I'm sticking with the Jason Isbell. I want to see how the Foxes in the Snow material works full band. Speaking of the Pinnacle, I went to that show in March, and it was my least favorite Jason Isbell show that I've ever seen. And I'm pretty sour. I was pretty sour on that. So I need a palate cleanse anyway. And I love freaking Band of Horses. By the way, the Pinnacle has not paid the people that built the Pinnacle. And there's an Instagram channel called Workers Dignity. And they want you to go and tag bands that are playing there in that thread. Maybe we can get some of the bands to talk to the people and tell them to pay their workers. That would be really awesome. I already posted in the group, but I'm really obsessed with this Athens, Ohio Gothic band called Laughing Chimes. And they're Gothic Jangle Goth. They're Appalachian Jangle Goth. And they literally wear their 80s. And they're all born they're like Gus's age, but they wear their 80s influences on their sleeve. And I'm like, oh my God, this sounds like Jesus and Mary Chain and REM and The Cure Had a Baby and Game Theory or whatever, Let's Active. And I go and look they have an influences playlist on their page. And literally they were listening to all that 80s music that we loved when they made this album, The Laughing Chimes. And then the singer had blonde hair and went and dyed it black. And he looks like freaking Robert Smith. And they're opening a Columbus show for Lifeguard. I don't even know if I like this album or not, but on Stephen Hyden's recommendation corner, he was like, these are kids. They started playing music together in middle school. They're only like 19 right now. They're extremely photogenic. They're like a post-punk punk trio from Chicago. And apparently they only make like paper fanzines. I mean, they're into all the things, right? And the album just dropped. Lifeguard's debut album just dropped. I'm definitely doing this post-punk thing. Some of the post-punk has country inflection, like Tombstone Poetry out of Asheville, who opened the show for Flurry last night. Both bands I thought were more stoner rock meets post-punk, but they all had pedal steel and they all had fiddle. There's that country inflection. Good Looks out of Texas. Friendship out of, I think they're also out of Philadelphia. I found out that Francie, the singer from Florida, though, no longer lives in Philadelphia. She moved to Burlington, Vermont. And having just come from Burlington, Vermont, I can tell you, Francie looks like she's from Burlington, Vermont. She's got that vibe. I finally saw Ryan Davis and the Roadhouse Band for the first time. And they're kind of like, they feel a little bit like the Dead, but they also have a strong David Berman and the Silver Jews influence. And then, speaking of covers, Willie Carlisle's brand new album drops this Friday. It's called Winged Victory. I think it's got about a third or even half cover songs. And I knew Willie was out as queer, but he was always pretty vague. He was bi or pan or whatever. This is another Pride Month shout out. But Willie Carlisle has a couple of very openly homosexual songs on this new album that are very, very beautiful. One's a cover of a Lavender Country song, and one is actually, I don't even know what, maybe not a gay song, I don't know what it is. It's called Big Butt Billy. It is hilarious, and it is nasty. I mean, it is a nasty folk song about big butt, nasty in the best sense of the word.
Which
about
big song do they cover?
They cover Cocksucking Tears.
Nice.
And he covers a Utah Phillips song, which Utah Phillips was covering, which is a traditional wobbly song that nobody knows who wrote it. We have fed you all for 1,000 years. There's a lot of covers on the Willie album. Drops on Friday. It is so fantastic. Let's we're past time. Joe, you want to take us out? Say any closing words or?
I keep freezing up.
We're going to have a GoFundMe to buy more internet for Joe. I hate this. Last month, if you were here, Amy was in her car on her phone, and then it was like, it was a whole thing. All right. We'll be back in July. Hopefully Gus is going to host it.
Yes.
Thank you all, nerds, and we'll see you next month. Thanks for coming to the party.
Hiya.
Everybody, it's a blast.